The bell above the door of Midnight Sweets chimed softly as Emma Rodriguez pushed inside, shaking the rain from her hospital scrubs. The small bakery glowed with warm light against the darkness of 2 a.m., its windows fogged with the heat from ovens that had been working through the night. The scent of vanilla and chocolate wrapped around her like a comforting embrace after another 12-hour shift in the ICU. Behind the counter, Theo Blackwood looked up from the cupcakes he was arranging, and Emma felt that familiar flutter in her chest that she had been experiencing for the past year. He was beautiful in an otherworldly way, pale skin that seemed to glow in the bakery's warm lighting, dark hair that looked like it had been touched by moonlight, and eyes the color of rich chocolate that always seemed to hold secrets. "Good morning, Emma," Theo said, his lips moving in the careful, exaggerated way that people used when they thought it would help her read them better. It didn't really. Lip reading was more art than science, and Emma caught maybe half of what people said on a good day. But she appreciated the effort. Emma smiled and nodded, pointing to the display case where tonight's selection of cupcakes sat like small works of art. Each one was perfectly crafted, decorated with intricate piping and delicate sugar flowers that seemed too beautiful to eat. Theo's skill as a baker was extraordinary. Every cupcake was a masterpiece, every cookie a tiny sculpture. She had been coming to Midnight Sweets for exactly 1 year now, ever since she had started working the night shift at St. Mary's Hospital 3 blocks away. The bakery was one of the few places open when she got off work, and Theo's cupcakes had become her small reward for surviving another night of caring for critically ill patients. What she didn't know was that Theo had been crafting each cupcake specifically for her, pouring his heart into every swirl of frosting, every carefully piped decoration. What she couldn't see was that each cupcake carried a message written in elegant script across its surface, declarations of love that she had never understood. Tonight's selection included red velvet cupcakes with cream cheese frosting, chocolate cupcakes topped with salted caramel, and her favorite, vanilla cupcakes with buttercream frosting that Theo somehow made taste like sunshine and happiness. Emma pointed to the vanilla cupcake in the center of the display, the one with the most elaborate decoration. Theo's face lit up with that gentle smile that made Emma's heart skip beats. He carefully lifted the cupcake from the case, placing it in a small white box with the same reverence he might show a precious jewel. As he handed it to her, their fingers brushed for just a moment, and Emma felt electricity shoot up her arm. "Thank you," she signed, one of the few signs that most hearing people recognized. Theo's eyes followed her hands with an intensity that she found both flattering and mysterious. Sometimes she caught him watching her sign to herself when she thought no one was looking, his expression thoughtful and focused. Theo said something else, his lips moving in what looked like it might be "have a good night," or "see you tomorrow," or possibly "you look beautiful tonight." Emma had learned not to guess too hard at lip reading. It led to too many embarrassing misunderstandings. She smiled, waved goodbye, and stepped back into the rain, clutching her cupcake box like a treasure. What Emma didn't see was the way Theo watched her through the window until she disappeared around the corner, his hands pressed against the glass like he could reach through it and touch her. What she didn't know was that tonight's cupcake bore the message, "Your smile is my sunrise," written in delicate script across the buttercream surface. And what she couldn't have imagined was that Theo Blackwood was a vampire who had been alive for over 2 centuries, and that in all those years, he had never felt anything like the love that consumed him every time she walked through his door. Back in her small apartment, Emma settled into her favorite chair with a cup of tea and her cupcake. She always took a moment to admire Theo's artistry before eating his creations. Tonight's cupcake was decorated with intricate piping that looked almost like writing, though she couldn't make out what it might say. The script was too elaborate, too stylized for her to decipher. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of the cupcake, as she had done with every single one for the past year. Her phone's gallery was filled with pictures of Theo's beautiful creations, each one a small work of art that seemed too precious to simply consume and forget. Emma had started taking the photos as a way to remember the bright spots in her difficult job. Working in the ICU was emotionally exhausting. She spent her nights caring for people who were fighting for their lives, comforting families who were facing their worst fears, and dealing with the constant presence of death and suffering. Theo's cupcakes had become more than just a late-night treat. They were a reminder that beauty still existed in the world, that someone could create something purely for the joy of creation. The elaborate decorations, the perfect flavors, the obvious care that went into every detail. It all spoke to an artistic soul that Emma found deeply appealing. She had tried several times over the past year to communicate more with Theo, to move beyond their simple transaction of money for cupcake. But the language barrier felt insurmountable. Theo didn't know sign language, and Emma's lip-reading skills were limited at best. She had considered writing notes, but her English writing was still awkward after years of primarily using ASL, and she was self-conscious about her grammar and spelling. So they remained locked in their pattern of smiles and gestures, of careful politeness and unspoken longing. Emma would point to a cupcake. Theo would box it with obvious pleasure, and they would exchange a few words that she might or might not understand correctly. But there was something in the way Theo looked at her, something in the extra care he took with her orders that made Emma wonder if there might be more to their interactions than simple customer service. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression that seemed almost tender, almost hopeful. Tonight, as she bit into the vanilla cupcake and tasted the perfect balance of sweet and subtle flavors, Emma found herself wishing she could tell Theo how much his kindness meant to her, how his beautiful creations brightened her difficult nights, how his gentle smile was often the best part of her day. But wishing and doing were different things, and the language barrier between them felt as solid as a brick wall. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, Theo was cleaning his bakery and trying not to think about the way Emma's eyes had lit up when she saw tonight's cupcake. He had spent 2 hours perfecting the piping on that single cupcake, writing and rewriting the message until the script was as beautiful as he could make it. "Your smile is my sunrise." It was true. Emma's smile was the brightest thing in his long, dark existence. For over 200 years, Theo had lived in the shadows, sustained by blood and the endless repetition of immortal nights. He had learned to bake as a way to create something beautiful, something that brought joy to others, even if he could never fully enjoy the fruits of his labor himself. Vampires could taste food, but it held no nutritional value for them. Theo baked because he loved the alchemy of it, the way simple ingredients could be transformed into something magical. He baked because it connected him to humanity in a way that his true nature never could. But Emma had changed everything. From the moment she had first walked into his bakery, tired from her shift, rain-soaked and beautiful, Theo had felt something he thought was lost forever: hope, love, the desire to be more than just a creature of the night. He had tried everything he could think of to communicate his feelings to her. Each cupcake was a love letter written in frosting, a declaration of devotion crafted in sugar and butter. He had written, "You are beautiful," and "I think of you always," and "Your kindness heals my soul." He had piped hearts and flowers and delicate scrollwork that spelled out his deepest feelings. But Emma never seemed to understand. She would smile and nod and take photos of his creations, but there was never any sign of recognition, never any indication that she saw the messages he was pouring his heart into. Theo had begun to wonder if his feelings were one-sided, if Emma saw him as nothing more than the baker who sold her late-night treats. The thought was devastating, but he couldn't bring himself to stop trying. Each night, he crafted a new message, hoping that somehow this would be the one she understood. Tonight marked the 50th cupcake he had made for her. 50 declarations of love that had gone unrecognized. 50 attempts to bridge the gap between them that seemed to grow wider with each passing day. As Theo locked up the bakery and prepared to retreat to his apartment above the shop, he made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't continue this way, couldn't keep pouring his heart into messages that Emma would never understand. It was time to learn her language. The next morning, Theo sat in front of his computer, searching for information about American Sign Language classes. He had never needed to learn a new language before. His vampire nature had given him an intuitive understanding of most human languages, a supernatural gift that had served him well over the centuries. But ASL was different. It was visual, spatial, requiring not just vocabulary, but an entirely different way of thinking about communication. It would be a challenge, but Theo had time. All the time in the world, literally, and motivation stronger than anything he had felt in 2 centuries of existence. He found an online course that promised to teach basic ASL in a matter of weeks. The instructor was a deaf woman named Sarah, who explained the fundamentals of sign language with patience and clarity. Theo threw himself into the lessons with the same intensity he brought to perfecting his baking, studying for hours each day, practicing signs until his movements were fluid and natural. He learned the alphabet first, then basic words and phrases. Hello, thank you, beautiful, love. Each sign felt like a key that might unlock the door between him and Emma, each lesson bringing him closer to the moment when he could finally tell her how he felt. As the weeks passed, Theo continued to make Emma's nightly cupcakes, but now each one felt different. Instead of desperate attempts to communicate, they became promises. Promises that soon he would be able to speak to her properly, to tell her everything he had been trying to say through frosting and sugar. Emma, meanwhile, continued her nightly visits to Midnight Sweets, unaware of the intensive studying happening in the apartment above the bakery. She noticed that Theo seemed different somehow, more focused, more purposeful, as if he were working towards some important goal. The cupcakes continued to be beautiful, each one decorated with elaborate script that looked like it might be writing but remained incomprehensible to her. Emma dutifully photographed each creation, her phone's gallery growing into a museum of Theo's artistry. She had begun to think of the decorative script as Theo's signature style, his way of making each cupcake unique and special. It never occurred to her that the elegant loops and swirls might actually be words, might be messages meant specifically for her. During her breaks at the hospital, Emma sometimes found herself scrolling through the photos of Theo's cupcakes, marveling at the consistency of his artistry and the obvious care that went into each creation. She had begun to think of the decorative script as Theo's signature style, his way of making each cupcake unique and special. It never occurred to her that the elegant loops and swirls might actually be words, might be messages meant specifically for her. During her breaks at the hospital, Emma sometimes found herself scrolling through the photos of Theo's cupcakes, marveling at the consistency of his artistry and the obvious care that went into each creation. Her co-workers had begun to tease her about her cupcake obsession, but Emma didn't mind. The photos were like a collection of small masterpieces, each one a reminder that beauty existed even in the darkest hours of the night. "You should ask him out," her friend and fellow nurse Maria suggested one evening as they sat in the hospital break room. "It's obvious he likes you. No baker puts that much effort into cupcakes for just any customer." Emma shook her head, her hands moving in rapid signs that Maria couldn't understand. Emma had tried to teach her coworkers some basic ASL, but most of them found it too difficult to learn. Maria knew enough signs to communicate basic medical information, but complex conversations were beyond her abilities. "I know you think it's complicated because of the language thing," Maria continued, "but love finds a way, you know? Maybe you should write him a note or something." Emma considered this suggestion, as she had many times before, but her written English was still imperfect, and she was embarrassed by her grammar mistakes and awkward phrasing. She had learned English as a second language, with ASL being her first and most natural form of communication. Writing in English felt clumsy and inadequate for expressing something as important as romantic feelings. So Emma continued her nightly visits to Midnight Suites, and Theo continued his intensive study of ASL, and both of them remained trapped in their separate worlds of unspoken longing. But change was coming. After 6 weeks of dedicated study, Theo felt confident enough in his signing abilities to attempt a real conversation with Emma. He had practiced the words he wanted to say thousands of times, had rehearsed the signs until they felt natural and fluid. On a rainy Thursday night, exactly 7 weeks after he had started learning ASL, Theo made a decision. Tonight would be the night he finally told Emma how he felt. Tonight, he would speak to her in her own language. He prepared her usual vanilla cupcake, but this time he left the surface blank. No elaborate script, no decorative piping, just smooth, perfect buttercream waiting for a different kind of message. When Emma pushed through the door at 2:15 a.m., shaking rain from her scrubs, Theo felt his heart race with anticipation and terror. This was it, the moment that would either bring them together or destroy the fragile connection they had built over the past year. "Good morning, Emma," he said, then took a deep breath and raised his hands. "Good morning, Emma," he signed, his movements careful but confident. Emma stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes widening with shock. She stared at Theo's hands, then at his face, then back at his hands, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. You know sign language?" she signed back, her movements quick and excited. "I learned," Theo signed, his vampire nature allowing him to see her signs clearly even in the dim lighting. "I learned for you." Emma's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. For a year, she had felt isolated in their interactions, limited to smiles and gestures and the frustration of incomplete communication. Now, suddenly, a whole new world of possibility had opened up. "Why?" she signed, her movements trembling with emotion. Theo reached under the counter and pulled out a photo album, a collection of pictures he had taken of every cupcake he had made for Emma over the past year. He opened it to the first page, showing her a photo of the very first cupcake she had bought from him. "Because I have been writing 'I love you' in 50 different ways," he signed, his movements becoming more confident as he saw the wonder in Emma's eyes. "And you never understood, so I learned your language." Emma stared at the photo album, then at Theo, then back at the photos. These are words?" she signed, pointing to the decorative script she had admired for so long. "Love letters," Theo confirmed. "Every single one. I have been trying to tell you how I feel for a year, but I was speaking the wrong language." With trembling hands, Emma reached for the photo album. Theo came around the counter and stood beside her, translating each message as she turned the pages. "You are beautiful. Your smile lights up my world. I think of you every moment. You are my heart." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she realized that every cupcake, every elaborate decoration she had admired had been a declaration of love. For a year, she had been photographing love letters without knowing it, collecting proof of devotion that she had been unable to read. "I saved them all," she signed, pulling out her phone and showing Theo her gallery of cupcake photos. "I thought they were just beautiful decorations. I never knew." "You kept them?" Theo signed, his own eyes filling with tears that sparkled like diamonds in the bakery's warm light. "Every single one. I thought they were special. I didn't know how special." Emma looked up at him, her face radiant with joy and disbelief. "You learned sign language for me? I would learn 1,000 languages for you," Theo signed. "I would do anything to be able to talk to you, to tell you how much you mean to me." Emma set down the photo album and turned to face him fully. "I love you too," she signed, her movements clear and certain. "I have loved you for months, but I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid my English wasn't good enough, afraid you would think I was silly." "Never silly," Theo signed, reaching out to gently touch her face. "Perfect. You are perfect." They stood there in the warm glow of the bakery, surrounded by the sweet scents of vanilla and chocolate, finally able to communicate with the fluency that their hearts had been seeking for a year. Theo closed the bakery early, flipping the sign to closed and dimming the lights until only the display case illuminated their corner of the world. "Tell me everything," Emma signed. "Tell me all the things you wanted to say." And Theo did. He told her about the moment she first walked into his bakery and how his immortal heart had suddenly remembered how to beat. He told her about the hours he spent crafting each cupcake, trying to pour his feelings into frosting and sugar. He told her about learning ASL, about practicing signs in his empty apartment while dreaming of the day he could speak to her properly. Emma told him about her job at the hospital, about the difficult nights when his cupcakes were the only bright spot in her darkness. She told her about the photos she had taken, about how she had sensed something special in his decorations without understanding what it was. She told her about the loneliness of being deaf in a hearing world, and how his gentle kindness had made her feel seen and valued. As the night wore on, they moved from the bakery to the small apartment above, where Theo made coffee, and Emma marveled at the ASL textbooks and practice materials scattered across his kitchen table. "You really did all this for me?" she signed, touching one of the well-worn books. "I would do anything for you," Theo replied. "I have lived for over 200 years, and I have never felt anything like this. You have awakened something in me that I thought was dead forever." Emma's eyes widened. 200 years? Theo hesitated, then decided that if they were going to have a real relationship, it had to be built on complete honesty. "I'm not entirely human, Emma. I'm what your folklore would call a vampire. I don't hurt people, and I don't drink blood from unwilling victims, but I am immortal." Emma stared at him for a long moment, processing this revelation. "That's why you only open the bakery at night?" "Among other reasons, yes." "And that's why you never eat the cupcakes yourself?" "I can taste them, but they don't nourish me the way they do humans." Emma was quiet for several minutes, her hands still as she thought through the implications of what Theo had told her. Finally, she looked up at him with a small smile. "So you're an immortal vampire who learned sign language just to tell me you love me?" she signed. "Yes." "That might be the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for me," Emma signed, her smile growing wider. "Though it does explain why you're so pale." Theo laughed, the sound bright and joyful in the quiet apartment. "You're not afraid?" "Should I be? You make cupcakes for a living and spent 6 weeks learning a new language just to communicate with me. You're probably the least threatening vampire in history. I prefer to think of myself as the most romantic vampire in history." "I can accept that," Emma signed, moving closer to him on the couch. "So what happens now?" "Now we have all the time in the world to get to know each other properly. Now I can tell you every day how much I love you, and you'll actually understand what I'm saying." Emma leaned against him, marveling at how perfectly she fit against his side. "Will you make me a cupcake tomorrow night, one with a message I can actually read?" "What would you like it to say?" Emma thought for a moment, then smiled. "How about, finally?" "Perfect," Theo signed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Absolutely perfect." The next evening, Emma arrived at Midnight Sweets with a nervous excitement that made her hands tremble as she pushed open the door. Everything was different now, not just because she and Theo could finally communicate, but because the entire context of their relationship had shifted overnight. She was no longer just a customer buying a late-night treat. She was a woman in love, visiting the vampire baker who had spent a year writing love letters and frosting, who had learned an entire language just to speak to her. Theo looked up from behind the counter, and his face lit up with a smile that was brighter than anything Emma had ever seen. He had been waiting for her, she realized, not just tonight, but for the entire year they had known each other. "Good evening, beautiful," he signed, the movements fluid and natural as if he had been signing his entire life. "Good evening," Emma signed back, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. "Did you make something special for me?" "I always make something special for you," Theo replied, reaching into the display case and pulling out a single cupcake. This one was different from all the others. Instead of elaborate decorative piping, it bore a simple message written in clear block letters across the vanilla buttercream. "Finally!" Emma laughed, the sound bright and joyful in the quiet bakery. "It's perfect." "Not as perfect as you," Theo signed, coming around the counter to stand beside her. "How was your shift?" It was such a simple question, the kind that people asked each other every day without thinking. But for Emma, it was revolutionary. For the first time in a year, someone was asking about her work, her life, her experiences, and she could actually answer. "Difficult," she signed, her hands moving with the natural fluency of her native language. "We lost a patient tonight, a young man, only 25, car accident." Theo's expression grew serious, and he reached out to gently touch her arm. "I'm sorry, that must be very hard." "It is, but it's also why I love what I do. Every life we save, every family we help, it matters." Emma paused, looking around the warm, welcoming space of the bakery. "Your cupcakes help too. They remind me that there's still beauty in the world, still reasons to smile." "Is that why you started coming here?" "At first, yes. I was having a particularly bad week, and I saw your lights on. I thought I would just buy something sweet and go home. But then," Emma smiled, remembering that first night, "then I saw how much care you put into everything. The way you arranged the cupcakes like they were precious jewels. The way you smiled when you handed me my order. It made me feel like I mattered." "You do matter," Theo signed emphatically. "You matter more than you know." They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, marveling at the ease of communication they had never had before. Emma felt like she was seeing Theo clearly for the first time, not just his physical beauty, but the kindness in his eyes, the gentleness in his movements, the obvious love that radiated from every gesture. "Can I ask you something?" Emma signed. "Anything." "What was it like, learning sign language? Was it difficult?" Theo considered the question carefully. "The mechanics weren't too hard. My vampire nature gives me enhanced learning abilities. But the emotional aspect was challenging. Every sign I learned was a step closer to being able to tell you how I feel, but also a reminder of how much time we had already lost." "We didn't lose time," Emma signed firmly. "We were both preparing for this moment. You were learning to speak to me, and I was learning to trust that someone could care about me the way you do." "You didn't trust it before?" Emma hesitated, then decided to be as honest as Theo had been with her. "Being deaf in a hearing world is lonely sometimes. People often treat me like I'm broken, like something that needs to be fixed. Or they're so focused on my deafness that they don't see me as a whole person. How do I see you? Like I'm beautiful, like I'm worth learning a new language for, like I'm—" Emma paused, searching for the right signs. "Like I'm enough, exactly as I am." Theo's eyes filled with tears that caught the light like prisms. "You are more than enough. You are everything." Emma felt her heart swell with an emotion so intense it almost hurt. "Show me," she signed. "Show me the cupcakes you made for me. All of them. I want to understand every message." Theo's face lit up with excitement. "Really? All 50? Every single one. I want to know what you were trying to tell me each night." Theo disappeared into the back room and returned with a large photo album, the same one he had shown her the night before. But now Emma could see it with new eyes. He opened it to the first page, and together they began the journey through a year of unspoken love. "This was the first one," Theo signed, pointing to a photo of a simple vanilla cupcake with elegant script across the top. It said, "You are beautiful. I had been watching you for 3 days, working up the courage to make something special for you." "You were watching me?" Emma signed, amused rather than concerned. "Not in a creepy way," Theo assured her quickly. I couldn't stop looking at you. You were so graceful, so kind to everyone you met. When you smiled at me that first night, I felt like the sun had risen in my chest." Emma turned the page, revealing another cupcake, this one decorated with delicate sugar flowers around the words, "Your smile is sunshine." "This was after you had been coming for a week," Theo explained. "I realized that your smile was the best part of my day, or night, I suppose. I started looking forward to 2 a.m. like other people look forward to Christmas morning." They continued through the album, with Theo translating each message and sharing the story behind it. "You Are My Hope" came after a particularly difficult night when Emma had arrived looking exhausted and sad. "Your Kindness Heals" was inspired by watching Emma comfort a crying child in the hospital parking lot. "I Dream of You" was written during a week when Emma had been working extra shifts and hadn't visited the bakery. "You really paid that much attention to me?" Emma signed, touched by the depth of his observation. "I paid attention to everything about you. The way you always checked your phone before ordering, like you were making sure you hadn't missed any important messages. The way you took photos of the cupcakes before eating them. The way you always thank you, even when you thought I couldn't understand your signs." "You could understand my signs?" "Basic ones, yes. Thank you, please, hello. I started researching ASL after your second visit, but I didn't begin seriously studying until a few weeks ago." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. Even before he had learned to sign properly, Theo had been trying to understand her, trying to bridge the gap between their worlds. They reached the middle of the album, where the messages became more personal, more revealing. "I Love Your Laugh" was decorated with musical notes made of sugar. "You Are My Heart" was surrounded by tiny fondant hearts in every shade of pink and red. "I Want to Know You" was written in script so delicate it looked like lace. "This one," Emma signed, pointing to a cupcake that said, "You Are Not Alone." "When did you make this one?" Theo's expression grew tender. "It was 3 months ago. You came in crying that night, and you looked so lost, so isolated. I wanted to comfort you, but I didn't know how. So I made that cupcake and hoped that somehow you would understand that someone cared about you." Emma remembered that night. She had lost a patient, a young mother who had fought for weeks before succumbing to her injuries. Emma had felt overwhelmed by the unfairness of it all, by the weight of caring for people she couldn't always save. "I felt it," she signed. "I didn't understand the words, but I felt the intention. That cupcake tasted like comfort. That's all I ever wanted, to comfort you, to make you smile, to let you know that you were seen and valued." They continued through the album, each page revealing another layer of Theo's devotion. The messages grew more elaborate as his feelings deepened. "You are my miracle. I would wait forever for you. You make me believe in love." "This is my favorite," Emma signed, stopping at a photo near the end of the album. The cupcake was decorated with an intricate design that looked like a garden of sugar flowers, and woven through the flowers were the words, "You are worth learning a new language for." "That was last week," Theo signed. "I had just started feeling confident in my signing, and I was so excited about the possibility of finally talking to you properly. I wanted you to know that you were worth any effort, any sacrifice." "I am crying," Emma signed, wiping tears from her cheeks. Happy tears, but still crying. "I'm sorry. Don't apologize. These are the most beautiful love letters I've ever received. The fact that I couldn't read them for a year doesn't make them any less perfect." Theo closed the album and set it aside, then took Emma's hands in his. "I have a confession to make." "What?" "I took pictures of you too. Not in a stalker way," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "But sometimes you would sit at the counter to eat your cupcake, and you would get this expression of pure joy when you tasted something you particularly liked. I couldn't help but capture those moments." "Show me," Emma signed, curious now. Theo pulled out his phone and scrolled through his photos, revealing dozens of pictures of Emma in the bakery. In some, she was examining a cupcake with scientific precision. In others, she was smiling with genuine delight. In a few, she was signing to herself, her hands moving in animated conversation with her own thoughts. "I look happy," Emma signed, surprised by her own expression in the photos. "You were happy. That's what made me fall in love with you. Not just your beauty, but your capacity for joy even after difficult days. You would come in exhausted and sad, but you would still smile when you saw the cupcakes. You still found reasons to be grateful." "I was grateful. I am grateful." Emma looked around the bakery, taking in the warm lighting, the carefully arranged displays, the obvious love that went into every detail. "This place became my sanctuary, and you became my bright spot in the darkness. Even when you couldn't understand what I was trying to tell you, especially then. There's something beautiful about kindness that doesn't expect anything in return. You never made me feel pressured to understand or respond. You just gave, night after night, without asking for anything back." Theo lifted her hands to his lips and pressed gentle kisses to her knuckles. "I was asking for something back. I was asking for your heart." "You had it," Emma signed. "You've had it for months. I just didn't know how to give it to you." They spent the rest of the night in the bakery, talking in the fluid, natural conversation that Emma had been craving for a year. Theo told her about his long life, about the loneliness of immortality, and how meeting her had changed everything. Emma told him about her childhood, about growing up deaf in a hearing family, about her decision to become a nurse despite the communication challenges it sometimes presented. "Do you ever wish you could hear?" Theo signed, curious about her experience. "Sometimes," Emma admitted. "Mostly, I wish other people could sign. But I've never known anything else, so I don't feel like I'm missing something. This is just how I experience the world. I think your way of experiencing the world is beautiful. You notice things that hearing people miss, the way light moves, the way people's faces change when they're thinking, the rhythm of visual language. You notice those things too, because I've been watching you notice them. You've taught me to see differently." As dawn approached, Theo walked Emma to her car, reluctant to let the night end. They had talked for hours, but it felt like they had only just begun to scratch the surface of everything they wanted to share. "Will you come back tonight?" Theo signed. "Every night," Emma replied, "for as long as you'll have me. That would be forever if you're willing." Emma stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, their first kiss sweet with the taste of buttercream and the promise of all the conversations yet to come. "Forever sounds perfect," she signed against his lips. As Emma drove home through the early morning streets, she felt like she was living in a dream. After a year of wondering and hoping and settling for smiles and gestures, she finally had what she had been longing for: real communication, genuine connection, and the knowledge that she was loved with a depth and devotion that took her breath away. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and she pulled over to read it. It was from Theo. "Thank you for giving me a reason to learn your language. Thank you for being worth every hour of study, every moment of hope. Sweet dreams, my love." Emma smiled and typed back, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for 50 love letters and frosting. Thank you for finally learning to speak to my heart." She drove the rest of the way home with tears of joy streaming down her face, already counting the hours until she could return to Midnight Sweets and the vampire baker who had learned to love her in her own language. 3 months later, the Midnight Sweets bakery had been transformed for the evening special event. Fairy lights twinkled from every surface, casting a warm, magical glow over the space that had become the birthplace of Emma and Theo's love story. Tonight was the bakery's first Silent Night event, an evening designed specifically for the deaf and hard of hearing community, where all communication would be in sign language and all the staff would be fluent in ASL. Emma stood behind the counter beside Theo, wearing an apron that read "Assistant Baker" in both English and ASL fingerspelling. Over the past 3 months, she had become not just Theo's girlfriend, but his business partner in creating a more inclusive space for deaf customers. "Are you nervous?" Theo signed to her as they made final preparations for the evening's crowd. "Excited," Emma replied, her hands moving with the fluid grace that Theo had come to love even more than her smile. "I never thought I'd see a bakery where ASL was the primary language. It should have always been this way. I just needed you to show me how." The idea for Silent Night had come from Emma, who had mentioned how isolating it could be to try to order food or drinks when the staff couldn't communicate with her. Theo had immediately begun planning an evening where deaf customers would feel completely welcome, completely understood. He had hired 3 deaf staff members for the event, all skilled bakers and baristas who brought their own perspectives to the menu. Together, they had created cupcakes with decorations that told stories in visual language, sugar flowers arranged like ASL signs, frosting piped in the shapes of hand shapes, messages written in clear, simple text that celebrated deaf culture and community. "First customers," Emma signed, nodding toward the door where a family with 2 deaf children was entering. Theo watched as Emma greeted them in ASL, her face lighting up with the joy of meeting new members of her community. The children's eyes went wide when they realized that everyone in the bakery could sign, that they could order their own cupcakes without needing their parents to translate. "What would you like?" Emma signed to the little girl, who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. "The one with the butterfly," the child signed back, pointing to a cupcake decorated with delicate sugar butterflies arranged to spell out "Fly High" in ASL hand shapes. "Excellent choice," Emma replied, carefully lifting the cupcake from the display case. "Did you know that butterflies are a symbol of transformation, just like how caterpillars become something beautiful and new?" The little girl nodded enthusiastically, then turned to her parents. "She knows sign language, and she's pretty." Emma blushed and signed back, "You're pretty too, and very smart for choosing the butterfly cupcake." Theo watched this interaction with a heart so full of love he thought it might burst. Seeing Emma in her element, communicating effortlessly with customers who shared her language and culture, reminded him why he had fallen in love with her in the first place. She had a gift for making people feel seen and valued, for creating connections that went beyond mere transactions. As the evening progressed, the bakery filled with members of the deaf community who had heard about the event through social media and word of mouth. There were families with deaf children, deaf adults who rarely found businesses that could communicate with them properly, and hearing people who were learning ASL and wanted to practice in a welcoming environment. "This is incredible," signed Dr. Sarah Martinez, a deaf professor from the local university who had become one of their regular customers. "I've never seen anything like this. A bakery where I don't have to write notes or point at things or hope someone understands me." "That was the goal," Theo signed back, his movements now so natural that newcomers often didn't realize he had only been signing for a few months. "Everyone should feel welcome here." "How did you learn to sign so well so quickly?" Dr. Martinez asked. Theo glanced at Emma, who was helping a deaf teenager choosing between 2 elaborate cupcakes. "I had the best motivation in the world. I was in love with someone whose language I didn't speak. And now? Now I can't imagine communicating any other way. ASL isn't just Emma's language, it's become ours." Dr. Martinez smiled and nodded toward Emma. "She's special, that one. I've seen her at the hospital, working with deaf patients. She has a gift for healing that goes beyond medical care." "I know," Theo signed. "She saved me too, in ways she doesn't even realize." As the evening wound down and the last customers departed with boxes of cupcakes and promises to return, Emma and Theo began cleaning up the bakery. The event had been a tremendous success. They had sold out of almost everything and had received dozens of requests for future Silent Night events. "I'm proud of you," Emma signed as she wiped down the counter. "This was your idea, your vision. You created something beautiful tonight." "We created it," Theo corrected. "I could never have done this without you. You taught me not just how to sign, but why it matters. You showed me what it means to truly include people instead of just accommodating them. Emma set down her queening cloth and moved to stand in front of him. Do you know what tonight meant to me? Tell me. For the first time in my life, I walked into a business where my language was the primary language, where I didn't have to adapt or compromise or settle for partial communication, where I could be completely myself. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You gave me that. You gave my entire community that. You gave me so much more, Theo replied, pulling her into his arms. You gave me a reason to be better, to do better. You gave me a purpose beyond just existing. They held each other in the quiet bakery, surrounded by the lingering scents of vanilla and chocolate, and the memory of an evening that had brought joy to dozens of people who rarely experienced that kind of inclusion. I have something for you, Theo signed, releasing her and moving to the display case where one last cupcake sat waiting. This cupcake was different from all the others, larger, more elaborate, decorated with intricate piping that formed a perfect replica of the ASL sign for love. But it was the message written across the top that made Emma's breath catch in her throat. "Marry me?" it read in clear, simple letters. Emma stared at the cupcake, then at Theo, who had dropped to one knee beside the counter. In his hands was a small velvet box containing a ring unlike anything she had ever seen. A band of white gold set with a diamond that had been cut in the shape of the ASL hand shape for "I love you." Emma Rodriguez, Theo signed, his movements careful and deliberate despite the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. You taught me that love is a language that must be learned, practiced, and spoken with intention. You showed me that the most beautiful conversations happen not with words, but with hearts that understand each other perfectly. Emma's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched the man she loved propose to her in the language he had learned just to speak to her heart. I want to spend eternity learning new ways to tell you I love you, Theo continued. I want to create 1,000 more cupcakes with messages you can understand. I want to build a life where your language is our language, where your dreams become our dreams. Theo paused, his dark eyes shining with hope and vulnerability. Will you marry me, Emma? Will you let me love you in ASL and English and every language we discover together? Emma didn't hesitate. Yes, she signed, her movements strong and certain despite her tears. Yes, yes, yes. Theo slipped the ring onto her finger, and Emma marveled at how perfectly it fit, how the diamond caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the bakery walls. It was the most beautiful ring she had ever seen, but more than that, it was a symbol of everything they had built together: communication, understanding, and love that transcended any barrier. I love you, Emma signed, the 3 signs that had started their journey together. I love you too, Theo signed back, then added with a grin, and I promise to tell you that every day for the rest of forever. They kissed in the quiet bakery, surrounded by the tools of Theo's trade and the memories of 50 cupcakes that had carried messages of love across the silence between them. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. So, Emma signed, wiping tears from her cheeks, what should our wedding cake say? How about finally, Theo suggested, remembering the message on the cupcake that had marked the beginning of their real relationship. Perfect, Emma agreed. But this time, I want to help you write it. Deal. We'll write it together, in both our languages. As they finished cleaning the bakery and prepared to head upstairs to Theo's apartment, Emma reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, she had been a lonely nurse buying cupcakes from a baker who couldn't speak her language. Tonight, she was an engaged woman who had found not just love, but a partner who had literally learned a new language to communicate with her heart. Theo, she signed as they climbed the stairs to his apartment. Yes? Thank you for 50 cupcakes. Thank you for learning my language. Thank you for showing me that love is worth any effort, any sacrifice, any amount of patience. Thank you for waiting for me to find the right words, Theo replied. Thank you for saving every photo, every memory, every moment of our story. What happens now? Now we plan a wedding. Now we expand Silent Night to other businesses. Now we spend the rest of our lives proving that love really can overcome any barrier. Theo paused at the top of the stairs and turned to face her. Now we write the rest of our story together, one sign at a time. Emma smiled and took his hand, marveling at how perfectly their fingers intertwined. I can't wait to see what we say next. As they entered the apartment that would soon become their shared home, Emma caught sight of the photo album that contained pictures of all 50 cupcakes Theo had made for her. Tomorrow, she would add a photo of tonight's cupcake, the one that had carried the most important message of all. But tonight, she was content to sit beside the vampire baker who had learned to love her in her own language, planning a future filled with sweet words and sweeter gestures, knowing that they had finally found the perfect recipe for forever. 1 year later, the wedding took place in the bakery, of course. Where else could they celebrate their love story except in the place where it had begun? The space had been transformed with flowers and fairy lights, but the heart of it remained the same. The display cases filled with beautiful cupcakes. The warm ovens that had produced 50 love letters and frosting. The counter where Emma had stood for a year without understanding the depth of devotion being offered to her. The ceremony was conducted entirely in ASL, with a deaf officiant who signed the vows with the kind of poetry that made even the hearing guests reach for tissues. Emma wore a dress the color of vanilla buttercream, while Theo stood beside her in a black suit that made his pale skin glow like moonlight. Do you, Theo, take Emma to be your wife, promising to love her in every language you know and every language you have yet to learn, the officiant signed. I do, Theo replied, his hand steady despite the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. In ASL, in English, in the language of sugar and flour, and in the silence between heartbeats where love lives. Do you, Emma, take Theo to be your husband, promising to help him write new love stories in frosting and in life? I do, Emma signed, her face radiant with joy, in sign language and in the universal language of two hearts that finally understand each other perfectly. When they kissed as husband and wife, the gathered crowd erupted in the visual applause of the deaf community, hands raised high, fingers fluttering like butterfly wings, creating a celebration that was both silent and thunderously joyful. The reception featured a wedding cake that was a masterpiece of both baking and communication. 3 tiers of vanilla cake were decorated with sugar flowers, arranged to spell out their love story in ASL hand shapes, while elegant script in both English and fingerspelling told the tale of 50 cupcakes and the vampire baker who learned a new language for love. Speech, speech, signed Dr. Martinez, who had become not just a customer but a dear friend. Theo and Emma stood together, hands intertwined, and began to sign in perfect unison, a skill they had practiced for months, learning to move as one voice, one heart, one story. A year ago, they signed together, we were 2 people separated by silence. Tonight, we are one couple united by every form of communication. Words, signs, gestures, and the kind of understanding that goes deeper than language. Love, Emma continued alone, is not about speaking the same language from the beginning. It's about caring enough to learn each other's languages, to build bridges across the spaces between us. It's about 50 cupcakes with messages that went unread, Theo added, and the patience to keep writing love letters until the right moment comes to deliver them properly. It's about discovering that the most beautiful conversations happen not when we speak perfectly, but when we listen with our hearts and respond with our whole selves. They finished together. The crowd erupted in visual applause again, and Emma felt her heart swell with gratitude for the community that had embraced their love story, for the friends who had supported them, and most of all, for the vampire baker who had seen her worth learning a new language for. Later, as they danced to music they couldn't hear but could feel in the vibrations of the floor and the rhythm of each other's movements, Emma marveled at how perfectly they fit together. Theo had learned not just her language, but her way of experiencing the world, through touch, through visual beauty, through the kind of communication that happened in the spaces between words. "Any regrets?" Theo signed as they swayed together in the center of the bakery. "Only that it took us so long to understand each other," Emma replied. "But maybe that's what made it so sweet when we finally did." "Like the perfect cupcake," Theo agreed. "Worth waiting for, worth the effort, and even more delicious because of the anticipation." "Speaking of cupcakes," Emma signed with a mischievous smile, "what message are you going to write on tomorrow's batch? How about happily ever after begins now?" "Perfect," Emma signed, rising on her toes to kiss her husband. "But this time, I already know what it says." "This time," Theo agreed, "we both speak the same language." As the evening wound down and their guests began to depart, Emma and Theo stood together in their bakery, now truly theirs, a business they would run together, creating not just cupcakes, but community, not just desserts, but inclusion. The display case still held a few cupcakes from the wedding reception, each one decorated with messages of love and hope in both English and ASL. Tomorrow, they would begin a new chapter of their story, serving customers who could communicate in any language and know they would be understood. "Ready to go upstairs, Mrs. Blackwood?" Theo signed, using Emma's new name for the first time. "Ready, Mr. Blackwood?" Emma replied, marveling at how natural it felt to be part of a pair, part of a team that could face anything as long as they faced it together. As they climbed the stairs to their apartment, Emma thought about the photo album that now contained not 50, but hundreds of pictures of Theo's cupcakes. Each one told part of their story: the year of misunderstood messages, the night of revelation, the months of growing love, and now the beginning of forever. But her favorite photo wasn't in the album yet. It was the one she had taken tonight of their wedding cake, with its message written in both their languages. Love finds a way. Because it had. Love had found a way across the silence between them, across the barriers of different languages and different natures. Love had found a way to transform a vampire baker and a deaf nurse into partners, into equals, into two halves of one perfect whole. And tomorrow, when the first customer walked into Midnight Sweets, they would find more than just a bakery. They would find a place where love had learned to speak every language, where understanding was served alongside sugar and flour, where two hearts had discovered that the sweetest communication of all was the kind that happened when souls recognized each other across any distance, any difference, any silence. The love letters in frosting had finally been delivered, understood, and answered. And the conversation they had started would continue for the rest of their immortal lives, written in sugar and signed with hearts that had finally learned to speak the same beautiful language. In the quiet of their apartment, as Emma and Theo prepared for their first night as husband and wife, they could still smell the lingering sweetness of vanilla and buttercream from the bakery below. It was the scent of their love story, the fragrance of patience rewarded and communication finally achieved. "Do you know what my favorite part of tonight was?" Emma signed as they sat together on their couch, still in their wedding clothes, reluctant to let the magic of the day end. "Tell me," Theo replied, pulling her closer against his side. "When we signed our vows together in perfect unison, for a moment it felt like we were one person, one voice, one heart speaking the same truth." "We are one heart," Theo confirmed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "We have been, since the moment you first walked into my bakery. It just took us a year to learn how to say it properly." Emma laughed, the sound bright and joyful in their quiet home. 51 cupcakes, actually. Don't forget tonight's wedding cupcakes. 51 declarations of love and counting, Theo agreed. "Because I plan to keep making you cupcakes for the rest of eternity. each one with a new message, a new way of saying how much you mean to me. And I plan to understand every single one, Emma signed, holding up her left hand where her wedding ring caught the light. The diamond cut in the shape of I love you sparkled like a tiny star, a constant reminder of the moment when their two languages had finally become one. What should tomorrow's cupcake say? Theo asked, already planning his next creation. Emma considered this, thinking about all the possibilities that stretched before them, the bakery they would run together, the community they would serve, the love they would continue to build one day at a time. How about day one of forever? She suggested. Perfect, Theo agreed. Though technically, every day with you has felt like the first day of forever. Even the days when I couldn't understand what you were trying to tell me? Especially those days, because they taught me that love isn't about being understood immediately. It's about being willing to keep trying until understanding comes. Emma turned in his arms so she could see his face clearly, could watch the expressions that had become as familiar to her as her own reflection. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had never learned to read your messages, if you had never learned sign language? I think we would have found another way, Theo said with quiet confidence. Love like ours doesn't give up easily. We would have kept searching until we found a language that worked for both of us. You really believe that? I know it, because for 200 years I existed without really living. Then you walked into my bakery, and suddenly I had a reason to learn, to grow, to become more than I was. That kind of love doesn't accept barriers. It finds ways around them, through them, over them. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears that had become a frequent occurrence since the night Theo had first signed to her. I love you, she signed, the 3 simple gestures that had started their real relationship. I love you too, Theo signed back, then added with a smile, in every language I know and every language I have yet to learn. As they prepared for bed, Emma caught sight of herself in the mirror and marveled at the transformation. A year ago, she had been a lonely nurse who bought cupcakes from a baker who couldn't speak her language. Tonight, she was a wife, a business partner, and a woman who had found her perfect match in the most unexpected place. The journey from silence to understanding hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every moment of confusion, every misunderstood gesture, every cupcake message that had gone unread. Because in the end, they had built something beautiful together, not just a relationship, but a new way of communicating that honored both their languages and created something entirely their own. Sweet dreams, Mrs. Blackwood, Theo signed as they settled into bed together. Sweet dreams, Mr. Blackwood, Emma replied, then added with a grin, and sweet cupcakes tomorrow. Always, Theo promised. For the rest of our lives, there will always be sweet cupcakes and sweeter words to go with them. As Emma drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she thought about the photo album downstairs, filled with pictures of 50 cupcakes that had carried love letters she couldn't read. Tomorrow, she would add the photos from their wedding, including the picture of their cake with its message in both their languages. But more than that, tomorrow would begin a new album, not just of cupcakes, but of a life built on understanding, patience, and the kind of love that was willing to learn new languages just to speak to a beloved's heart. The vampire baker and his deaf wife had found their happily ever after, written in frosting and signed with hands that had finally learned to speak the same beautiful language. And in the bakery below, the ovens waited patiently for tomorrow's batch, ready to carry new messages of devotion to a world that was learning one cupcake at a time, that love really could overcome any barrier. The sweetest communication of all was the kind that happened when two hearts recognized each other across any distance, any difference, any silence, and chose to build bridges of understanding that would last for all eternity. What an absolutely heartwarming journey of patience, dedication, and the power of learning love's true language we just experienced. From that bittersweet opening where Emma unknowingly collected 50 love letters written in frosting, to the life-changing moment when Theo finally signed to her for the first time, to their gorgeous wedding in the very bakery where their love story began, every single moment had me completely captivated. The way Theo spent months secretly learning ASL just to communicate with Emma's heart, while she treasured every cupcake without understanding the messages, just melted my soul completely. And watching them discover that love isn't about speaking the same language from the beginning, it's about caring enough to learn each other's languages, pure perfection. That scene where Theo revealed the photo album of all 50 cupcakes and translated each love letter was absolutely transcendent. I'm still getting emotional thinking about how they transformed their communication barrier into the foundation for something beautiful, not just their relationship, but an inclusive bakery where ASL became the language of love and community. The symbolism of love letters written in frosting, finally understood and answered, was just chef's kiss perfect. Which moment hit you hardest? Was it when Theo first signed "I learned for you" and Emma realized what all those decorations really were? When they went through the photo album together, translating a year's worth of unspoken devotion? Or that gorgeous proposal scene with the ring shaped like the ASL sign for "I love you"? If this story of patient love, learning new languages for the heart, and sweet communication moved your soul, smash that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. Your support helps me bring you more tales where love finds a way to bridge any gap and speak to every heart. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think you could have been as dedicated as Theo, learning an entire new language just to communicate with someone you loved? And what did you think of the way they turned their bakery into an inclusive space where everyone could feel understood? Plus, I'm dying to know which of Theo's 50 cupcake messages would have meant the most to you. Next week, I'm bringing you another heart-melting supernatural romance. She was the town's blind librarian until the ancient phoenix taught her to see with fire. Get ready for magical sight, ancient guardians, and a heroine who discovers that sometimes the most beautiful visions come from the heart. Until then, remember that the sweetest love stories are written by those who care enough to learn each other's languages, one patient gesture at a time.